Continuing on this morning, we're going to have a few minutes to explore our Teacher's Edition. And so in your training packets, you have a 44 Teacher's Edition sampler that I'd like you to retrieve. And for a few minutes, we're going to spend just looking through this from page 8 to 37, as it says on our screen. I'd like you to consider, as you just leaf through this and see the wonderful features in here, how some of these features will support your students in their learning process as well as you in teaching your classes. As you're looking through this, and then as we're talking about our module coming up, you have a wonderful page to record on page 51 in your TIG. So you're going to be navigating a couple books right now, and I'd like to just give you about a minute or two to just explore. The next thing we're going to do is to go through our module step by step and see just exactly what is composed in this module. So first of all, we need to talk about the word module. And let's just pretend that this is all very new to us, which pieces and parts of it are. And we're going to take a look at this module and do our vocabulary routine. So repeat after me the vocabulary word, module. Module. All right, rate it for me. Number 1, I've never heard this word before. Number 2, I've heard it, but I don't really know much about it. Number 3, yeah, I kind of know what that means. And number 4, I've heard it and I use it. So let me see your rating. All right, so module is a noun. And when we talk about a module, we think about it as being synonymous to a workbook or a unit or workshop or a unit. And so that's exactly what it is. And in a module in System 44, we have many goodies for our students to learn, and we also have 8 modules in System 44 Next Generation. So keeping with our vocabulary routine then, who can give me an example of when you use a module? Yes. Great. So I've heard special ed teachers have to work through some modules to keep your certification and also to learn more about IEPs and differentiating your instruction and modifying your testing environment for the new park. Yes, we're all going to be familiar with that word module coming up. So let's take a look on page 10 at our module. So in our overview, we see that every one of our modules has a topic. And this particular topic for module number 1 is called School Matters. And this is in our secondary book. All right, of course, our upper elementary book would have a different topic. All right, as we look through the module overview, we see that it begins with an anchor media, which is our anchor video, and it gives some background knowledge and it provides a great text to engage the students and then to set the stage for what the rest of the module will be working on in the area of content reading. The second part of our anchor media goes into a text that's called Reading for Meaning, as you see, text 1, and it's a guidebook, and the guidebook is all about applying to college, and that's on page 14 if you choose to look at that. The other thing that we see that's so important, and we've already gone over this, is your text complexity triangle. So it not only lets you know the lexile of this particular reading, but it also tells you the qualitative measure. So is it simple? Is it moderate? And so forth. And so as you see, there are various text complexity levels in our module. The third piece is a stretch text. And the stretch text is more of a comprehension text, and it's more complex. As you can see, it's 1210 lexile. So this is where our students have an opportunity to read those grade level proficient texts, and thus the word stretch. All right, at that point, we've spent 3 days. And so what happens then is that we go and take a little break in the module, and we do some other kinds of differentiated instruction. And we're going to visit that in a minute. But before we do that, I want us to look on and see that number 2, text 2, is also reading for meaning and is a brochure. And so it is what in the text complexity triangle? Yes, moderate, and the lexile is absolutely 810. All right, so our third reading is Never Too Late. And so, of course, it tells us about Rashida Harris, who dropped out of school but then decided to return so she and her daughter could have a better life. And so this text is simple, and it's a 370 lexile. The last reading that we have is another stretch text, and it is extremely challenging in that it doesn't have a lexile. And why do you think it might not have a lexile? What genre is this? Absolutely, it's poetry. And so sometimes due to the complexity the sentence and words chosen, it's impossible to really give this a lexile. And the last piece of our module is a research project. And that project is about having students write an application essay, which we know that for college and career is happening more and more every day. All right, so that's our overview, and we know that we see our text complexity triangle, and we always keep that in mind. So before we do anything with our students, we know we need to be able to determine what their lexile measure is, and so we need to be able to match books to their lexile level and know if these books and these readings are at least something that they can access with student support. So in order to do that, we take the SRI, and that's our Scholastic Reading Inventory. It assesses the students' reading comprehension, just their reading comprehension, and then it reports their reading levels as a lexile measure. And that lexile measure then determines their lexile range. And their lexile range would be 100 below to 50 above their designated lexile on the SRI. So looking at our screenshots, we see some sample shots, and then we know that this piece is what is the blue part, which is the quantitative measure of the triangle. The other measure, we know we have the qualitative measure, which is how difficult is it in regards to the students accessing the text because of their background or because of the level of thought required and the depth. And the third part of the triangle is not only how much support we have to do to enable our students to access this text, but also what tasks are they going to be required to perform so that we know what kind of rigor we need to set for these students as they learn the different comprehension skills and writing skills that they need to be successful. All right, so let's take a look at our module planning, and that guide is on page 12. And this is really meant for you to see how to access this and go through a module, because it is a little different than most of the modules or the workshops that you're accustomed to. So thinking about what this looks like, I want you to listen and look and then determine how long you think it's going to take to complete each module. All right? So, as we talked before, when you see this pacing suggestion at the top, our pre-reading and building background knowledge and the teaching academic vocabulary piece takes 2 days. So in a perfect world, in the perfect school, which we always have interruptions and days off and so forth, but just for the purpose of getting our heads wrapped around this, let's think that on Monday and Tuesday we would build our background knowledge, and then we would teach our academic vocabulary in our whole group instruction. On day 3, which would be Wednesday, we would all read our text. And we would look at our guidebook and our 44 book, and we would know that we will cover text-based questioning, word analysis, academic discussion, and summarizing. Then you see that there's a little yellow arrow and it says checkpoint 1. That's like a stop sign. And so for 2 days we stop instruction in the 44 book and we do some work that would help students with differentiating instruction. So at this time we're going to take a look at what our students are doing on the software and how they're progressing through the software, and we're going to use some supplementary lessons from our RDI book, which is Resources for Differentiated Instruction, another great acronym, RDI, and we can go through this book and choose appropriate lessons, smart lessons, and different activities, and we're going to delve into this more later, that would meet the students' needs as they are going through the software. We have some things to learn about our teacher dashboard, which will help us to appropriately group our students for those activities. And then students also have an opportunity during these 2 days to do some work on independent reading. And so that's our third component that we have. And of course we know that independent reading includes that decodable digest. So just thinking about how the workshop is set up, we have 3 days of instruction in our 44 book, and 2 days of instruction which is dedicated to differentiation, and then independent reading. Alright, after those 2 days, which would be equivalent to a week of instruction, we go back into our 44 book. In our 44 book now, in Next Generation, unlike EE, our Enterprise Edition, the SMART lessons that are appropriate for this module are in our book. So they're embedded into the modules. And so you can see that in module number 1, it's blending sounds into words. All right, and then this particular lesson would take 1 day. The second day that week would be information writing. And again, it's embedded into our overview, and we have it in our 44 book. All right, so this time the students are being asked to write an informative paragraph. And then the third day, which would be Wednesday, we have our second reading, which is a brochure. And so our brochure is another genre and something that the kids see frequently that they can learn how to access. So just taking a look at what that looks like. And then, of course, we build some more word knowledge with some more target vocabulary words, which occurs during all of our reads. All right, so it's Wednesday again, and so that means that we pause again from the R book and we look at our RDI book, we look at our our software student performance report, and we say, okay, this is what our students need again in the RDI book. Or I've noticed as I'm teaching my classes or we're doing our Do Now that they are actually needing to support their work that they're not doing so well and have these RDI books. All right. So then after spending 2 days in differentiated instruction and also in our R book and in our RDI book, we go back to the 44 book and we take a look at reading 3. So reading 3 is a blog. So our students are probably very familiar with blogs and they may even know how to set up a blog. But they read the blog and then of course there's text-based questions about the blog. This one is a longer read and so it may take a little bit more time as you're looking at your pacing chart. And then you also have a SMART lesson. And so that SMART lesson is very phonics centered and it talks a lot about segmenting words into sounds. And so because that particular read took 2 days, we are reaching the third day again with our SMART lesson. And so we stop again and we pause for some differentiated instruction and some independent reading. And then the last part of the workshop, we have argument writing. And so this time we have a more complex argument writing piece to complete. And then the last part of our workshop is our research project. All right, and so our research project ends our formal work in this module. However, we still have our 2 checkpoint dates to differentiate instruction based on things you noticed in the module that they did not do as well as you had hoped, or confusions, other complementary activities or summarizing, and using, of course, our red routines. So taking a look at how the module progressed and then making some decisions on exactly what we need to do to complete the learning for that module. All right, so hopefully that will give you a little bit of an overview as far as how that looks. All right, so now we're going to go into some depth about not just an overview, but what exactly happens on day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. All right, so we will know exactly how we're going to do this. I need to pause just a moment.